Good morning. Hey, Claude. Hey, Darren. Thanks for popping in so quick. So today I have the music of Ajit playing in my left ear since my right speaker doesn't really work. And today we are going to learn some lessons about fastidiousness. Okay, so here's a quick recap of yesterday's work. I think when I left off, I was kind of working through this whole sequence of shots, and then the last thing I did was this shot. Interesting shot in that it's really, frankly, I don't think it's working that well. So to a point you could get away with it and say, well, it's a bit of an effecty shot, and it could be that by massaging the way that the animation is happening, perhaps it could be made better. But basically, this shot was a very, very time-consuming shot for questionable benefit in terms of storytelling. Because the question I have to always ask myself is this shot raising the level of quality or lowering it? And my sense is that it's lowering it. So that's okay. I mean, it's a lesson learned. But basically, that's kind of what. And by the way, Meritus Volans. Hi. Apparently you know Darren, so probably on the Discord or something, I guess, maybe. So anyway, so this morning what I did was, how much is Sony Vegas? You can get the, it's owned by Magix now, and they've kind of been a player in the world of sort of economy media software for many, many, many years, and I think at the low end, the stripped down version, which is probably quite adequate for most people, you can probably get for $50 or something. And then I'm not sure though. You look at Magix, Magix. So used to be Sony. The version I'm using is a Sony version, but so anyway, all in all, this sequence went pretty darn well. I love that effect in Monkey's eyes. As is so often the case with an anime type approach to animation, a lot of times the things that are so easy to do are actually the things that really raise the quality level. Actually, like adding this villager walking across the scene was a huge win. Absolutely added all kinds of life to the shot. So anyway, with that said, I decided today I was going to go through and Darren, you drew Asher. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. There might be a copyright issue there, buddy. So anyway, I pull up episode 1. I'm like, I'm gonna exercise some of this fastidiousness. So I'm looking at the very first shot that appears in the show. Originally, this was shot 11 because there was some stuff cut out. But basically, so I'm looking at this, and I go over to Blender. And I tell you guys, it's embarrassing to admit that my focus on speed has backfired in so many ways, and it feeds into my frequent software rants, because usually, like, I would just have to say, easily 80% of the things that either go wrong or cause frustration and discouragement pretty much are my own fault. And as I was going through this shot, I realized that every single element in this shot, every element, the sky, the clouds, the mountains, the buildings, every single component of this shot had room for improvement. And for the most part, the improvements were pretty easy. They involved bringing the constituent images into Krita and kind of adding some gradients, and then attending to some details that were maybe a little bit sloppy. But the other aspect of it was when I went through and started looking at my layers in this shot and stuff. None of them were named. They were all like layer 1, layer 2, blah, blah, blah. So it's like you don't know what the heck you've got, right? So, Darren, right on, man. I'm the next Disney. Yeah, right. Well, going back here, one thing that I thought was pretty cool is if you go into your clip properties in Vegas, you can make the active take name whatever the heck you want it to be. In fact, this I'm gonna actually copy that name to this one, and I'll show you the difference here. I'll just show you the difference between these two shots. So let me just kill this layer, and you can see the original shot was this, and it's not bad. And if you're going for a very flat, cartoony aesthetic, um, it works. The problem is that that's not really where we're going. We're going to a more of a little bit more polished anime type of look, and so the rework looks like this, and it'll just flow into the old version so you can see the difference. So the clouds were changed. I put a gradient on the sky. There were no mountains in the background, the distant mountains, and none of this was particularly hard to do. It was actually pretty quick. So I'm still seeing two things that could be improved here. One would be to go ahead and animate the clouds a little bit so they're moving essentially to the right. And then, frankly, a bird flitting by in the background, like probably over here somewhere, would be a tremendous improvement. And I think I'll have to look somewhere in my files, but I'm pretty sure I have an animated bird flapping their wings cycle. Yeah, Claude, to answer your question, let me tell you something. Um, One of the coolest things about Vegas, I'll demonstrate it really, really quickly here. If I take and create a new scene in Vegas, okay, this is actually one of the biggest things about Vegas that would make a person maybe seriously consider it as a tool of choice. It basically does nesting um, more reliably than almost any of the 3D or animation programs I've used. So let me just go through here and show you this. Okay, so if I go and I grab, I'm grabbing episode 1. Okay, so we were just looking at episode 1. Okay, well guess what? Now we're still looking at episode 1. What we're looking at here is the veg file, the Vegas project file. And the ability to drag the Vegas file into another Vegas file so that this becomes a self-contained clip. And it's robust, meaning that when I've edited feature films, every single scene in the movie, which usually there's, oh, I don't know, there's probably going to be at least 50, let's say. If you're going to have 50 scenes. For me, every single scene in the movie is actually a separate Vegas clip. And then you've got the ability to right mouse click on it and go edit in Vegas. And what that does is it takes the nested veg file and opens it up so that you can dink around with it, make changes, which I'm going to do right now. What I'm going to do, let me just check and make sure my ripple editing is not turned on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this clip, and I'm going to just move this one down and slide it over like this. Okay, so now this is actually the clip we're starting out the show with. All right, so now if I hit save and then I jump back to Vegas, Wango Bango, it automatically, instantly has updated. Everything just flows through seamlessly in the way that you would expect or hope. So, I mean, that's why I use Vegas. I've been using Vegas for 20 years, since it was Sonic Foundry Vegas. And as I say, it's a very robust program. Back in the day, it was poo-pooed, by people that were big on Adobe Premiere, for example, and Avid especially, because your Avid type software was better integrated with dedicated hardware, which did make performance better, because Sony Vegas is a .NET application that is other than GPU acceleration of like rendering. Other than that, Vegas is completely dependent on your system and your CPU to do what it does. And their basic philosophy going back 20 years ago was, look, every year the computers get faster and faster and faster. So if we just code to the hardware, eventually we're going to be as fast or faster than everybody else. And indeed, that's exactly what has happened. It took a few years for sure. But anyway, so that's enough about Vegas. So I'm seeing again a couple things here that we can improve in this shot before we render it out. And what I did here in Blender, by the way, is I've got a little window here that's in fully rendered mode. Because some of the images are so transparent, like the clouds, that you can't even see them in the materials view. You know, you can just see a little tiny speck there, but basically you can't see what you're doing. So for me, it was easier to say, well, this is kind of interactive, and we'll get that going. And um, hey, Ariane Pahadi, have you used nested? Darren says, um, have you used nesting for editing Salt and Light? I've not noticed you doing so. Okay, yeah. So that's a good question. Generally, the flow has been to not. And that's kind of a legacy decision that had as much to do with trying to. Sorry, I'm trying to tweak my silly webcam. I was trying to embrace open source tools pretty much as possible. That's why when I was back working on the Akari anime thing, it was actually being edited in Blender. Um, I've heard that, by the way, that Blender 2.9 series that the performance has been improved somewhat in the video sequence editor, so that makes Blender a more viable option for regular video editing. It's already pretty good. I mean, it's always been definitely good enough for most things. But once you get into a long movie or a show that's more than, say, 10 minutes long, things you start to see where the performance can begin to lag, right? So if someone's looking for an open source tool, you can obviously look at DaVinci Resolve. You can look at HitFilm Express, which is kind of middleware. It's not exactly free and it's not exactly paid. It's sort of both. If you're looking for something really quick and dirty, what is it? Quick. I've actually got it up here. OpenShot. OpenShot's actually surprisingly capable. If they put some decent color correction tools in OpenShot, it would be an amazing program. But I have noticed it is a little bit crashy. You know, it's definitely not hard to crash it. So anyway, what did I say I wanted to do here? I'm going to go ahead and switch this Vegas thing back to on my other screen to the original edit. But here's the thing. The thing about nesting in Vegas is this. If you want to kind of really cut to Claude's question too, and Ajax. Okay, so to answer Ajax, if I'm going to do node-based compositing, where I really want to get down and dirty with my layers, which I may wind up doing in this very shot. We'll see. I don't think so, though. I don't think this shot calls for it, but sorry, guys. I'm looking for my mouse. There it is. With 3 screens, sometimes things get a little winky. Okay, so ultimately, in Blender, I can take every one of these images and put them in a different render layer so that in compositing, you could have each layer coming out a different node and you could add specific color correction and overlays and whatever you want. So if you're going to do node-based compositing, Blender is super, super capable. It's not the most performance in terms of pure speed. That's more the purview of probably dedicated compositors. But as far as performance and speed goes, Vegas beats them all. I will tell you that. No question. Vegas smashes them tremendously. So the thing I was saying about Vegas is every layer in Vegas that's a track. Let me go back here and let me just switch back here. Let me look at something here. Let me look at this. Ignore a missing file. Yeah, we'll ignore that. Okay, yeah, so in this case, this I believe is actually a nested project. Okay, so I can edit that in Vegas and any changes will propagate. And furthermore, what I was trying to get at here is that every single layer, as far as like video tracks, can be stacked up. You can have as many video tracks as you want, and they all have the ability to change the compositing mode, overlay, hard light, dodge, burn, the usual suspects. And not only that, but importantly, you can also create group layers that are going to pre-composite a certain number of video tracks as a group, just like Krita does with groups. Um, and in that sense, you can have a very complex composite going in Vegas that, again, just simply um, comes back into your main timeline as a single clip. So it basically it works exactly the way you would expect and want it to. Okay, so that's probably the best way to explain it. So as far as node-based compositing, it's either generally going to be Blender or it's going to be Tahoma or OpenToonz. The schematic in OpenToonz or Tahoma is a very capable, very powerful compositor. Again, not amazing performance. Tahoma's performance, like in other words, I don't think there is a node-based compositing program that's going to give you real-time playback without having to like cache the render into memory and that type of thing. There's ways around that. You could set up a RAM drive on your system and use a RAM drive as a workspace, as a temporary workspace. Just remember to always copy stuff out of the RAM drive onto your normal hard drive to save things if you want to work that way. But if your basic workspace was a RAM drive, then you could really get the performance up, I would guess. So, but I actually fiddled around a bit with Natron a very short time ago, because Natron is a very deep, rich node-based compositor, and my basic assessment of Natron is it sucks. And the reason it sucks is because it's an amazing program where the documentation is almost non-existent. So my sense is that it was used as an internal tool, and the people that wrote the software know it inside and out and don't really particularly care that much about making it, documenting it well enough for everybody to just dive in and be productive with it. So that's their choice. They're certainly welcome to it. But for me, Natron gets a D or a D minus, not because of its capabilities as a program, because it's obviously very capable, deeper and more powerful by far than Blender or Tahoma, as far as compositing, color correction, motion tracking, all that kind of stuff. But if you don't document your software, like if you go into the Natron documentation, it's hilarious. 90% of the pages have headings, have titles, and then you go to the page and it's empty. It's like, to do. So it's just silly, really. But that's what you get sometimes. So anyway, hopefully that answers everybody's questions, and we can get back to work here. Oh yes, what I was going to do is animate the clouds. So let me, over here, since I've finally named things properly, I can say, well, here's where it ends. So all I'm going to do is hit the G key, X, and then I'm going to hit Shift so that the moving is really, really slow. I'm just going to move these guys a little bit. Okay. Now this is, again, a little problematic. Okay, that was a mistake. Yesterday, it's funny. Yesterday, I was just logging the number of mistakes I make, and pretty amazing how frequently I make mistakes. Pretty amazing. Okay, so there was another one. I was not on the correct frame, and I didn't turn on the automatic keyframing so that it would register the keyframe. So again, G, X, Shift. Probably something like that. So what I was going to say is problematic. The reason I couldn't see what I was doing actually is I'm not in the normal dope sheet, which could mean it looks like there was no key set on the first frame either. So that means, okay, I see what's going on. So I'm going to put this here, and I guess technically you could call this a mistake as well, because I actually need to move it back to its starting position and get those keys registered. Okay, so GX. I'm looking at the position of the clouds in the preview over here. Looks like this cloud is sort of almost kissing the mountain, and when you get over here, hasn't moved that much. That's probably about right. Let me see. I don't know. That doesn't look like much of a move to me. I'm going to move that baby a little bit more. That's probably better. That's probably better. MB1. Hey, MB1. Okay, so now, unfortunately, that means we have to hit Control F12 and render it if we want to really see what our clouds are doing, just because it's impossible to see the darn things in the fast preview. So with that, while we let that render, I think what I'm going to do is go see if I can find my bird. Okay, so where would the bird be? The bird would be in the Akari project, actually. The very first scene. I wonder if I can run 2 instances of Blender here. Let me find out. It does not look... Oh, yes it does. Okay, so fine. Okay, so having mentioned this, I might as well clarify it a bit. Okay, so I'm just waiting for Blender's interface to wake up. Okay, I see what's going on. Okay, so this is something I'm surprised if OBS isn't actually freezing up as well. Okay, so I'm going to transition back here. Okay, so what's going on right now, guys, is we really need to deal with Blender's CPU usage. This rendering is for the birds. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go, if you've never used the task manager this way, I'll tell you it's quite useful. What you want to do is open your task manager and then go to the details. Okay, and there's Blender, and it's using 90% CPU. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all set its affinity to only, let's just say, 4 CPUs. Okay, so yeah, I actually do have 12 CPUs on this machine. Okay, so that dropped its CPU usage to 33% right out of the gate. That'll probably do the trick. So we'll see. While we're here, why don't we take OBS and set it to 4 CPUs just to... What I used to do when I was rendering long programs with Vegas and needed to have multiple ones rendering all at the same time, you know, like all night or whatever, what I used to do is I would actually put each instance of Vegas on separate CPUs, and it worked really, really well. Okay, so now I'm going to jump back here, and let's open Val's Anime Blender opening scene video edit. Okay, so those who don't know what the heck I'm talking about when I talk about the Akari anime thing, that's this. I kind of set this aside when I started working on Salt and Light, just because there was kind of a distribution pathway for Salt and Light that made sense. So, whereas this is more of just a personal project kind of thing. So, anyway, this is the shot I was referring to. Here we've got yeah, those birds. That's not really quite the right bird, though. Maybe it is. That's probably 3 instances of the same thing. So why don't we check it out and see what we get away with? I'm just going to close that. So I think what we'll do is we'll go to Faststone and see if I can find those silly birds. Because if I can, I wouldn't mind putting one instance of the bird in there. I don't recall if I actually... Yeah, it doesn't look like I organized my shots quite the same way. Oh, I know. This is probably in... this is actually probably a Tahoma shot. This would have been done in OpenToonz, I bet. So let me look in the drawings folder. Okay. Okay. Not finding any images. Okay, so just to be, so we don't take all day dinking around here, I'm going to open up Tahoma and see if I can dig into this in Tahoma while this is rendering. So, is the live stream actually um, looking about like usual? I'm kind of curious since I've limited OBS to 4 CPUs. Okay, so I'm going to go to my browser, and I'm actually going to go to the computer. Scenes? Okay, that's probably it right there. I would betcha. Yep, there's the shot. Okay, so where the heck are the birds is the question. What I'm basically trying to do is chase down the location of the original image sequence that was used for the birds. Yeah, okay, good. Thanks, Darren. Ah, there's the bird. All right, so now we go across here. And is it this? Yep, that says birds, and this looks like, oh my gosh, it looks like it's a, is this a vector level? That could be problematic. Or is it a sub X sheet? It's a sub X sheet. Sorry, I was seeing the pink. And okay, now what we'll do is we'll look at this level and we'll just look at the level settings, and that'll tell us where the image sequence is. It's in animate, render, bird flapping. Cool, that works. Okay, I'm going to just leave that open. And gosh, do I dare open the same Blender file up twice? I certainly could, and it wouldn't harm anything as long as I haven't saved. I don't know if I saved it before I started rendering. So I think the simple solution here is to stop the render. You know, if we really wanted to, we could always restart it from frame 40 or wherever it left off, kind of thing. So not a big deal. So what we're trying to do here is we're going to go into 3D, and I would say the safe way to approach this would be to go ahead and leave the cursor at the center of the situation of the scene, and I'm gonna go Control C and then move this over into our into Salt and Light. Actually, scene 11. That'll solve it all. That'll make it brain dead easy. And then I'm again being fastidious by keeping things organized. You know, keeping everything together the way I really should have been doing all along. So, okay, so there's the birds flapping. Okay, so cool. Let's go back to Blender. And Dirt says monk or monkey. Okay, bird flapping. Okay. I'm going to assume here we've got pings and we've got TIFFs, so I'm going to assume this is what I want. Actually, let's just lasso select that. We are going to put it in emit mode. Boom. And we are going to animate the image sequence. So let's import images as planes. And then, of course, we're going to scale them down. But what I want to do is look at his texture, because what we want to do here is to make it loop endlessly. Okay? And the way we do that is, let's go into our properties, and we're going to go to the texture for the bird. Okay, it looks like, it's using, it's not using face textures, so I know that's a Blender bug that's been there forever. Now that I've switched the material, I bet you I'll see the texture when I go back to the texture window. And indeed I do. So that's Blender for you. You know, sometimes stuff happens. Okay, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at the image sequence right here. And we want to turn it to cyclic. Cyclic means it's going to repeat forever. Yep, see there? Nice. Okay, so now all we want to do is decide when the bird's, how big the bird's going to be, for one thing, which I think the bird should be pretty small, but not too small. I'm thinking we want to have the bird way over here, and I'm just going to have the bird fly up this way. Okay, so by the time we get here, we're going to hit the go button. Okay, escape, go. Put the bird up here, and now it's really in the wrong position at the start. It's not high enough. Did I just say high enough? As you guys know, if that's a dyslexia moment. I always say high when I mean low. It's not low enough. Okay, okay. I'm going to rethink that. Okay, so I'm going to go, let's go back here. There is a key for scaling there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go scale on the x minus 1. So sx minus 1 causes the bird to be pointed in a different direction. Did that work? Let me double check that. Hello, Blender. Yes, okay. So scale on the x minus 1. Let's rotate him kind of like that. And now, before I go too far, I'm going to go ahead and scale him back up again. I want to look at the positioning. Well, he's basically where he needs to be, actually. Behind the buildings, but in front of the rest of the world. So I'm going to scale him down, move him off screen, and then we get here. That's the clouds right there. Probably what I should do here, just to make my life easier at the end, so that when we get here, we can go like this, and then if we want, we could maybe make a slight mod in the middle somewhere. Okay, let's look at what the render looks like. Not bad, not bad. I think if the bird was really in the sky, okay, so this is going to be something that is, now we're getting kind of persnickety, but if that bird was really in the sky like that, he would actually be picking up some environmental perspective, meaning that actually the bird would not be black like that, actually. Okay, what just happened? I'm going to hit undo. Yeah, okay. So this is the problem with looking at things in rendered mode, and we need to turn off automatic keyframing so we're not accidentally setting keys. Okay, so what I want to do is grab the bird, and I'm going to change his emit value. So let's go here. I should say maybe the emit value, maybe his transparency actually. Probably if we go to the alpha, let me just turn the alpha down. Yeah, so -1 makes it, obviously as you can see it's inverted, but what I'm thinking is I want to go alpha, and then I'm going to hit shift and start easing it back in so that essentially some of the sky can bleed in behind the bird. If we look at it in rendered mode, that's not too bad. Maybe a little denser than that. I'm just thinking around 0.6. That feels right to me. File, save. Alright, and so that's that. I'm going to render this, and I think I'll mod my I think I'm going to pick on Blender a little bit more. If we're going to be rendering this in the background, let me see, do we have only one instance? Yeah, we do. Okay, so it's this, and this is currently set to an affinity of 4 CPUs. I'm going to actually change that to just 2. That way Blender can boink, render in the background at its own pace and not really intrude on the rest of our system performance. But yeah, I've had as many as 3 or 4 different projects rendering all at the same time in Vegas, all allocated to different CPUs so that they could just render like at, you know, until 2 in the morning or whatever. And sometimes that's what you got to do. All right. So that takes us back to Vegas. Let's go. Boom, back to Vegas. All right, we don't want to have this open. Okay, I was thinking that was a sub-X sheet, or not a sub-X sheet, a nested project that was open. And apparently I was wrong with a capital W. So, all right. So again, what we're doing today is we are exercising fastidiousness, meaning we're looking at shots at the beginning of the show that could be improved. The next candidate is going to be shot number, well, essentially the second shot. And, you know, this one was done in Blender 2, not Blender version 2, meaning Blender also. It looks pretty good, but I'm still missing that. I'm still missing the gradients that have become such an important part of the look of the show. You know, through most of this section, and also this little bit here that's like given the history with the king and the queen. I believe that this and this need to look more like proper paintings, like they're painting. Obviously, you didn't have photographs back then, so I want to do some work on that. Probably. That will have to be done. This shot looks pretty darn good. This shot, so this sequence through here looks pretty good. These have more the sort of look that we're trying to achieve. So does this. This shot was actually redone recently. Now I could still see a little bit of work being done with his garment, but not too bad actually. Not too bad through here. I have mixed feelings about the throne room. So I would say let's just deal with one thing at a time. So it means this needs to be reopened in Blender. That's shot number 12. So let's go to back over yonder. We're going to open up another instance of Blender. My suspicion is that this is well, I was going to say it's mostly grease pencil, but I can tell that the guy in the foreground was pre-rendered and probably done in Krita. So we'll see. We'll go into Blender here and find out what the heck's going on. I'm waiting for Blender to launch here. Everything is being a little bit pokey. So it's interesting. Right now there's 3 concurrent viewers, okay? Whereas at the start we had like 7. So it does beg the question for me is I really am curious what those who are here, what is it, why are you here? What is it you're here to see or learn? What is it you want to get out of watching this process? Because I feel like I only say that because I think when I get into some of this nuance of being fastidious with like things like file naming, probably a lot of people mentally check out, and it's really ironic because the stuff that is the most boring is often actually by far the most important. And it's not altogether surprising. The stuff that's the most important usually is not the most glamorous stuff. Like, you're not seeing me do a lot of drawing today. If you're here to see drawing and animation, you know, traditional 2D animation, that definitely happens. It's just that that doesn't happen to be what I'm working on right now. Okay, why the heck is Blender not launching like I told it to? Almost looks like a minute ago we had 2 instances of Blender open. And for whatever reason, it seems to be hesitating to launch another instance. Well, let's cheat. Let's cheat if we can. Let's see if we can trick it by opening up the project in 2.81 and just see what happens. I don't think it's going to work though, because I think if there is grease pencil, it's all going to look wrong. I'll tell you, what you see on the screen right now is why Blender 2.8 Plus is actually becoming more viable for me, which is, believe it or not, it's as stupid as this. Okay, K. Simmons, observe your workflow and learn new techniques. Okay, well, that's what I'm doing. I'm showing you the real deal. Like I said, it's not very glamorous. The thing I did last week in Blender was I went into the preferences and I just made the overall font like one notch bigger. It's like 120%, and all of a sudden I can freaking see what I'm doing, you know? Because these letters are really, really tiny. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna be working so well, but where are we here? So let's go back up to scene. I'm guessing it would be 12. And there is a blend file, but I don't think it's Blender 2.8 Plus, so it's probably going to look crazy. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. That's what I was afraid of. So you can see, maybe not, maybe not. Okay, I think I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. The interface is a little winky here. That's interesting. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, it's definitely bumping around kind of pokey here. But what I want to do is go in rendered mode. And I guess the question is, why are we not seeing the image sequences? Well, who knows? Let's just grab... Okay, that's interesting. So I just went to select something, perhaps somewhat foolishly using my right mouse button, and Blender just went poof. It just disappeared. Died completely. Okay, okay. Sometimes that's what happens. I'm here watching your process. You're also working in free software, which gives me hope. Well, it is cheaper, that's for sure. But I suppose vis-a-vis some of the things I was saying about Vegas, sometimes the software that isn't free actually winds up being a lot cheaper in the long run. Basically, you know, you want to get the right tool for the job. But as I said, a moment ago, we had 2 instances of Blender open, and now for whatever reason, I don't have a clue what the reason is. Blender does not want to open another instance. Is it because it's rendering? Seems kind of stupid that one instance would interfere with another just because it's rendering, but let's find out. There's only one way to find out, and that's to interrupt the render and then try opening Blender again. Because I can't do anything with the next shot until I can open it in Blender. And for whatever reason, normally multiple instances of Blender are not a problem. Actually, I shouldn't say that. It's hit and miss. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It really is true. Sometimes, you know, it's usually the case that you can have Blender 2.7 open and 2.8. But 2 instances of the same version, typically it'll tell you Blender's already open. In this case, it's not even doing that. Okay, so I think the solution is going to be to just move on down the road and render this later. So I just want to look at this. I think that'll probably be fine. So I'm going to save this. And hey Maria, and let's open up number 12 here. See what we get. Okay, that looks more like what we were expecting to see. Okay, so when we go like this, it appears to me, I know what's going on. Okay, so the children are Well, they've got a loop in their animation, so they might be an image sequence. Nope, they are grease pencil. So they are grease pencil. Let's look at the texture. Hey, Varia. So it would appear to me that the only thing in this shot that is grease pencil is the children. Let's look up here at our layers. Yep. So we got grease pencil on the kids, and everything else is image sequences. What is this? Is that an image sequence? I think it is. Yep. Okay. Something I really hate to tell you guys this, but there is something strange going on in the Blender interface. Let me go to object mode. That's probably the problem. Yeah. Okay. So I think the simplest solution for this one is to bring the composite into Vegas and re-render it with an overlay. So with that, I'm going to reload this one and let it go back to rendering again. And we're going to jump over to Vegas, because what I want to do here is let's create a new project, and then I'm going to import an image sequence, and it's going to be shot number 12. Render. Open the whole thing. I believe it should be 24 frames a second if I'm not mistaken. That's interesting. An error occurred processing the undo buffer. You should save your work immediately. An error occurred writing the file. Make sure you have access to the file folder and there's enough free space. That is... that is very interesting. It's the kind of thing that I have not seen. Well, the last couple days have been like that, so I hate to say it, but it is what it is. Things going wrong that are just a little mysterious. Sometimes it gets me down, but you know what? There's a point where you go, you know what, this is just the way it is. Software is just a little persnickety sometimes. It just is what it is. Okay, so if we just drag the image in, what happens? An error occurred processing the undo buffer. So unfortunately, guys, I hate to say it again, but this is something that I've only ever seen like twice in 20 years of using Vegas. So it calls to question whether there's actually some issues on my system with the hard drive. I know the hard drives are pretty maxed out space-wise, but yeah, I've never seen anything like this in recent memory. If we go back to this image sequence is playing back just fine. So there's something wrong with the process. This is literally the same images, by the way, just to be clear. These are the same images that Vegas was puking on a moment ago. If I wanted to, gosh, what I could do is open another instance and just copy it in. Let's give it a crack. It's worth a try. This is what we do. We basically... Now it works. Except, oh, it is animated. That's interesting. So now what I'm going to do is... we're basically tricking Vegas. Now there it is again. That is really strange. I know what's going on. Well, no. I was going to say it's because it's open in 2 instances of Vegas, but it, I had it closed a moment ago, though. So, what do you do? Well, this is what happened with Krita the other day. All of a sudden, Krita was having problems. And again, in each of these cases, it's cases where I've sort of got the same things open in 2 different places. Like, for example, one thing that's going on right now that you might want to be aware of is that these images that are rendering right now and being saved to the hard disk right now are, in fact, in this image sequence. So the problem I'm seeing with this may actually have to do with this. So that's what makes live streaming this kind of stuff a little problematic. And it's usually why I spend the first 2 hours of the day not live streaming, is because you bump into a lot of things where it's like now I have to go chase down a problem, and you guys probably aren't going to really have a wonderfully inspired time watching me chase down a problem on the hard drive. So I say we get back to episode 2. We'll let Blender render and just get back to episode 2, and all this has to be done sooner or later anyway, so that's that. So let's come back here, and here's where we're at with the show. And what we're going to do is decide how we're going to handle this, which might be to do nothing with it at the moment. Let's look at what happens next. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control L so that I can ripple edit and look at the next. Okay, so we've got Mel marching across. Okay. And now we're having the same issue. Autosave. I don't know what to. I think I'm going to have to kill the live stream. I don't think there's any option. I can't. This looks like it could be like this is what happened with Krita the other day, and Krita was unable to save files. Okay, had never happened before. It would appear not to be a file system issue because I was able to render from Krita. No problem. That's how I was able to save all my layers by just rendering them. And I was able to cut and paste from Krita into Tahoma. So there was clearly no real file system issues. It was something Krita was complaining about. And it wasn't completely unreasonable because the shot that I was working with had been dragged and dropped from another shot, and moving layers around is the #1 primary way to crash Krita these days. You know? So this is kind of like that. You know, Vegas is acting strange, but keep in mind that there's a live image sequence that we are rendering right now in real time that's being referenced in that Vegas timeline. So this is the same kind of thing that we were seeing happen with Krita the other day. So I don't think we've got some catastrophic computer problem here. I think we're just dealing with the fact that, like, if this was rendering into a temp folder and then I was going to copy it into the real folder afterwards, probably we wouldn't be bumping into the issue we're bumping into. So I think for me, the best course of action right now, unfortunately, is to kill the live stream, chase it down. Don't know for sure if I'll be back, but it doesn't do me any good to be here if I can't actually get any work done, and I'm being stopped at every turn at the moment. So this thing needs to, I need to jump this back up to 12 CPUs, get it rendered as fast as possible, and see where we go from there. So again, I apologize, done my best today, but it is what it is, and this is in fact exactly what you can run into when you're dealing with an enormously complicated project, which this is. We're dealing with hundreds of image sequences, hundreds of shots, hundreds of Vegas, not Vegas projects, but clips, blah, 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 blah. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and who knows, guys, I might be back in 20 minutes. I might not be back at all today. We'll see. But anyway, thanks for being here, and